Story 1. She was married but told me that her marriage had been purely platonic for years and that she was allowed to have lovers. I did not question it. I should have. Story 2. She was perfectly fine manipulating other men and bragging about it in front of me, but I was different. I am an idiot. Story 3. Met this woman shortly after I got divorced. Absolute 10. We met for drinks and she asked if I had ever been arrested. I laughed and said no, and I asked her. She laughed and said yes. I thought it was something stupid, but no, it was domestic violence. She had tried to throw boiling water on her ex. She was so hot that I didn't even flinch. We dated a few months, and I came home one day to find she had moved in. She acted like it was the greatest surprise, but I did not. When I did not reciprocate, she lost her mind. She broke some things in my house, called me every name she could think of, grabbed her stuff, and left. I had to change my locks, garage code, and phone number. The hot crazy scale was 100% dead on with her. Story 4. 6 months into dating this woman, I came home from dinner with my child, something we did every Thursday evening, and she knew that. I got home and told her I was home and was getting in the shower. About 10 minutes into the shower, I heard the front door open and stuff being slammed everywhere. I jumped out of the shower thinking I was being robbed, and she ran into my bathroom tearing my curtain off, looking behind doors and yelling, "Where is she? Where is she? I felt the hood of your car and it's cold. You didn't see your kid. You're cheating on me." I showed her the receipt from our dinner, and she calmed down. We talked, and she said she just knew something was wrong. We went to sleep, and I woke up to her grabbing my hair and punching me in the face repeatedly. I grabbed her and threw her off me, yelling at her to stop, and she said she had found evidence I was cheating but could not show me. We got into a big fight, and I went to the living room to sleep while she stayed in bed. While on the couch, I was thinking, what was that all about? I decided I would not accept this behavior and that it had to end. I woke up to her performing oral sex on me on the couch. Between every deep suck, she would tell me how sorry she was, that she didn't mean it, and that she trusted me. She followed every move I loved and told me to finish deep in her throat. That whole day became a free-for-all sex day where I could do whatever I wanted to her. For these reasons, I stayed for 3 years in a narcissistic, physically abusive relationship. She was extremely attractive and had an amazing figure. She knew how to move. When she broke up with me, I was shattered. She was with a new man within a month, and I was in therapy for a year. Story 5. She had bad spending habits. When we met, she already had a 600-pound debt that her parents eventually helped her resolve. Once we were married and had our own house, her spending habits were no longer her parents' problem. They became mine. 15,000 pounds of debt later, which she blamed entirely on me, despite most of it being spent on constant holidays and crates of clothes she never wore. It was all my fault for being out of work for 1 month a few years ago. We have been separated since February, and I have never had so much spare cash in the bank. But I can't look at her anymore either. Story 6. They were in a relationship with 2 other people, neither of whom knew about the other, when they started making out with me. I was surprised a year later when a random man tried to fight me because he believed I was making up lies about dating his girlfriend. Story 7. Lies. Not meeting at a scheduled day and time. I ended it after both. But attractive girls do not like being dumped. So I was tricked into keeping things going. Then she left me because attractive girls do not like being rejected. Story 8. All of my male friends want to be with me. I could be with any of them if I wanted to. It turns out that means she is eventually going to want to with most of them. Somehow it becomes my fault. Story 9. Her personal requirement was to make at least 1 new Instagram post per day and at least 8 stories. She was trying to build her personal brand, which meant she always had her phone out and her entire life revolved around doing anything to drive engagement on her social media profiles. To her credit, she is objectively very attractive and has around 25,000 followers, but I had to break things off when I realized I did not like her at all. I just liked looking at her. Story 10. This is going to sound like a humble brag, but it isn't. I met a woman not long after my divorce. Gorgeous, amazing body, I, on the other hand, have Jack Black's body and the face of the average millennial overweight guy with brown hair and glasses. We hung out, and she let me go down on her after a couple of dates. Afterwards, she was strangely complimentary, saying she had never had anyone make her feel that way. She said lots of guys just used her for her body and never focused on her. It felt good to be appreciated for something I've prided myself on, but she wouldn't stop talking about it. Every day, every conversation led back to it. I was lonely and horny, so I took it as a huge ego boost. At one point, she offhandedly said she didn't think she could live without it. I took it as flirting. I saw her again, did it again, and she was still raving, now saying she couldn't wait to move in together so she could have it every night. We had been together for 3 weeks. I laughed it off and she got kinda mad. I apologized, saying I hadn't thought that far ahead. She asked if I even wanted to be with her. I tried to calm her, told her of course, but I hadn't thought much about the future since I was very recently divorced. She left the room in a huff and told me to go home. I left, and we didn't talk for a couple of days until she texted me and said sorry. She said she'd had a bad history with guys and didn't want to feel used again. This confused me since she focused on how much I treated her in ways no one else had. I pointed this out, and she got mad again but told me to stop fighting and that we should get dinner. At dinner, she brought this up once more, and I told her I was starting to worry she was obsessed. It was making me uncomfortable and we needed to step back. She didn't like this at all, freaked out and left for her car. I paid and apologized to my server and went to my car. That's when she tried to run me over. I jumped out of the way. She backed up and yelled that if I thought she was obsessed, she would make sure no one else could have me, so I couldn't give anyone else great orgasms and then ruin their lives by leaving. An actual thing she said to me. Thankfully, a police officer was at the restaurant and arrested her when he saw what happened. Story 11. She had no friends. Eventually, I learned that the people she called friends she had not seen in 10 years. She read Maeve Binchy books to try to understand what a friend is and why people have them. After the end of a 17-year emotionally and psychologically abusive marriage, I learned what narcissistic personality disorder is. After several years of trauma therapy, I am in a much better place. Story 12. He was 19. I was 14. He told me he had been charged with statutory rape, but that he did not do it. Well, story 13. She was a pathological liar and wanted people to like her. At the time, I saw a popular blonde cheerleader in her senior year. I dated her, married her shortly after high school, and years later divorced due to her cheating. To this day, she still lies about why we divorced. Story 14. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder. 1 month was a screaming, arguing hellscape. The next was unending adoration and unspeakably good intimacy. Story 15. We were co-workers. I had been working there for 2 years when she was hired. She came on too strong too quickly. It turned out she just wanted the promotion I was competing for. Story 16. A lot, but mostly that she was a spoiled child with huge mood swings if something was not done her way. One time, when she was on her period, I forgot to buy her a candy bar and she tried to get me arrested. She was going to accuse me of inappropriate behavior. Story 17. Began by chatting with an attractive older woman as a college student on public transportation. Progressed to a dinner date where she insisted I call her mommy. Should have left then. Ended at her place with an adult-sized diaper and a pacifier, with her urging me to put them on and get spanked for making mommy think bad things. At least I got a free dinner. Story 18. Methamphetamine use. Sweet, amazing person, highly functioning in certain areas of her life, but it is a lot. Story 19. The engagement ring on her right hand caught my attention. I didn't think much about it at first, but then I started to notice how beautiful it was, especially compared to everything else she wore. Story 20. I was told by my best friend's wife, who had known her for more than 20 years. She is crazy. Do not get involved with her. However, she had a large chest and a cute smile. So I was involved with Miss Crazy for 3 months. It was a very unwise decision. Story 21. She was gorgeous, but I found out that she was a Nazi. I am a black man, and it was my first time dating a white woman. so it left a bad taste in my mouth, unfortunately. Story 22. He would not eat soy sauce because of the estrogen in it and took a tablespoon of baking soda once a day to regulate his pH. He was not very smart. Story 23. Not mine but my brother's. He ignored many warning signs with his first wife. The worst was that she shot and killed her boyfriend before him after being caught stealing all of his drugs. Story 24. I had a man try to be controlling. He tried to stop me from wearing certain outfits, wanted me to stop hanging around with male friends, and a few other things that came across as controlling. He was pretty nasty with some of the things he said, but he was so muscular, tall, had blue eyes, and amazing blonde hair. Anytime he looked at me, I would just melt. When I eventually realized and ended the relationship, my friends thought I was crazy. But no man is ever going to dictate what I can and cannot do. Story 25. The biggest red flag I ignore when a potential partner is attractive is that she is attractive. I know that sounds ridiculous, but in my experience, attractive women are not my style. It is an automatic red flag to me. There is nothing wrong with being attractive, but I know I am not going to be able to keep up with the majority of them. Many have been catered to in their lives and treated like princesses who can do no wrong. I usually decide not to pursue them. It requires too much time, work, money, and mental energy for someone whose attractiveness will certainly not last a lifetime. Give me someone who is confident, funny, and intelligent, and you are talking my speed. In summary, being conventionally attractive is a red flag I will always ignore. I know I am probably excluding some solid dating partners, but I will take my chances. Story 26. She was extremely jealous, without me ever giving her a reason to be. The sex was absolutely amazing though. Story 27. She had a closet overflowing with clothes that still had the price tags on them because she never wore them. She turned out to be terrible with money and an impulse shopper. Story 28. I woke up to her writing me with a very angry look on her face. After she finished her intense orgasm, she broke up with me. Story 29. Alcoholism, no friends, black sheep of his family. The hole he previously punched in his wall, suggesting we do OnlyFans to pay his bills. We did not. He blew me away with the first kiss. I was mindless from that point forward. Story 30. Where to begin? He was a massive conspiracy theorist. He believed the earth is flat, the media is controlled by the deep state, and that celebrities and politicians drink children's blood underneath the Denver airport. Story 31. She had extraordinarily high levels of narcissism and no capacity for self-reflection or genuine empathy. We tend to assume people are like us and can learn and grow. Not everyone can, though, or more accurately, has the desire to. Story 32. I slept 3 different times with a man who had multiple arrests. He told me his ex was abusive and that she lied about his abuse. When I finally looked up his arrests, they were for assault and domestic violence. Thankfully, I never stayed around long enough for him to abuse me too. I stopped contacting him when I started talking to the person who is now my partner. My partner treats me well. That man has since created several new Facebook accounts in an attempt to contact me, and I blocked them all. I have moved away from that town, so I am all good. Story 33. Constantly feeling like I am chasing them. They never ask how I am or what I am doing most of the time. They would have other plans on a day we plan something. Story 34. She told me she was a business consultant, but it turned out she just had benefactors around the country who sent her money. She would visit them once a month, but claimed they never did anything inappropriate. She had a severe psychotic meltdown the first time we spent a whole weekend together and started twitching and speaking incoherently. When I asked her what her dream job would be in the future, she said seriously, I think I'd probably want to be an assassin. Somehow, we still lasted a few months until she borrowed my car without asking and crashed it into the wall of a parking garage at 2 a.m. She claimed she was sober but didn't want to file a police report because her license was suspended. When I saw the car, there was a cigarette burn hole in one of the armrests. Afterwards, she tried to involve me in insurance fraud to pay for the damage. But honestly, her appearance was stunning, and the intimacy was extraordinary. Story 35. Legitimate insanity. Took about 2 months to be sure, but I could have reasonably stepped away after one. Story 36. Everyone hated and feared her. Even the apartment office did not allow her to renew her lease. Story 37. Stole them from their partner. That relationship was failing, but the way we communicated while they were still with their ex should have been a dead giveaway. I was lonely, and they were my dream manifestation partner, so I chose not to look into it. Story 38. An utter narcissist with a wildly inflated sense of importance, but also a very popular Suicide Girls model at the time. Story 39. He called himself a god and said that I was his property. He was very attractive, but eventually the ugliness in him caused his appearance to fade quickly. Story 40. He talked about all of his exes as crazy and said they had accused him of all kinds of false things that he never did. He turned out to be a rapist. I found out the hard way. Story 41. He had just canceled a date with someone because he did not want to hurt her. His ex had dumped him a month earlier, and he knew it would have been just sex. That did not stop him from coming on to me, though. Story 42. She hid behind, "I am not ready for a relationship," while continuing to sleep with her ex. She claimed it was just sleeping, but I no longer speak to her after managing to find a crumb of self-respect for myself. I suppose I can be thankful she helped me unwittingly with boundary development. Thanks, Shelley. Story 43. All of his friends were very interested in him. He was really into it and clearly loved the attention. Everyone wanted to be with him, both his male friends and his female friends, and he was painfully aware of it and enjoyed knowing that. I got tired of being one of his admirers. He liked me too, but I always felt like I had to fight for his attention. I ended up making out with 3 of his friends, 2 boys and 1 girl, as a power move to try to make him jealous. Eventually, I was with him in front of those same friends once, just to get it out of my system and to know that I was one of the very few people who was ever able to reach the top of the admirer group and connect with him. I had a lot of issues and was going through a phase where I only sought validation through sexual attention. I also enjoyed knowing that people wanted me. I do not recommend that approach. I did not like how I felt around him. I always felt like I had to perform for him and be the hottest, coolest, funniest person in the room to keep his attention. I am happily married to a man who is devoted to me and is not interested in anyone else. So it all worked out. I don't need to perform to be loved. I don't have to fight for attention. I can just be myself and he just wants me. It is a much better feeling. Story 44. They left their ex for me. Nearly a year later, they had a man over for Christmas, and I heard nothing about it until much later. Once I thought about it, I was not surprised. Story 45. He dealt with problems and boredom in our relationship by ghosting me for weeks or months at a time, then calling me at random hours to say he was sorry and wanted to start over. This continued for about 2 years before I finally said no and moved on with my life. Story 46. He was a raging alcoholic, drinking while driving to work in the morning. I thought, and he made me feel that I could fix him. He also love-bombed me. He ended up being extremely emotionally abusive. Story 47. Met a woman who, within just a couple of hours, was in my bed. Yes, she was attractive. She and I had met at a venue where a friend had driven her, so I drove her home the next day around lunchtime. Her house was large and very nice. I left thinking she was attractive and had money. She was 35, my age at the time. She couldn't get enough sex either. I thought I had hit the jackpot. The red flags started appearing before long. She was actually unemployed. I found out she hadn't driven because she didn't have a car or a license, and that friend was really just her taxi driver. The house belonged to her parents, who had taken her back in after she got out of jail. She was severely bipolar in her manic stage and, like many people in that state, saw no reason to stay on her medication because she felt better without it. Until she mentioned her jail time, I was still looking for ways to overlook everything and keep her in bed, which she definitely wanted. Story 48. Always trying to improve my life, such as helping me remove things from my diet that were not really a problem in hindsight. She pushed me out of a relaxed job I liked for a higher paying job that I hated. Over time, this turned into extremely controlling behavior. She contacted my department head once to find out about my attendance and tried to bribe her with cash to keep it secret. Later, she tried to get a doctor to tell me my appendix burst due to lack of nutrition. Story 49. She did not care much about me. By now we are good colleagues and have fun together, but as a couple she used to make me kinda sad. Story 50. Every time I talked to her, she had some dramatic episode. I asked her how her day was, and it led to a 45-minute detailed retelling about how the counter girl at Wendy's wronged her. Story 51. I ignored many obvious red flags because I had never had a local girl show interest in me before. I had only ever met women long distance. The most significant red flag was her telling me that if I told her I was having suicidal thoughts, she would tell me to kill myself. Story 52. She was not adventurous in any way. In fact, she was very boring. She did not like trying non-Chinese foods, did not enjoy traveling, exploring, or listening to music other than mandopop and cantopop, and did not like talking about any subject other than her family. However, she was stunningly gorgeous and liked me. Story 53. I was the attractive one in this situation. A girl approached me, made every move on me, and yet she did not realize that I was not attracted to her. To be fair to her, I did not realize I was not attracted to her until after 3 weeks of talking with her, hence the red flag. Story 54. This applies not only to attractive people but to anyone who says they do not have many friends because their friends were toxic or for other reasons. In my experience, 10% of the time it is actually their friends being bad, while 90% of the time they are the toxic ones and their friends got tired of it. Story 55. Talking to herself when we smoked marijuana together the first time. I brushed it off as her just being obnoxious to get high with and tried to avoid it. Then, during the coronavirus pandemic, she went off her medication and became violently psychotic. It turns out she had schizoaffective disorder, and the marijuana was causing symptoms the medication had suppressed. Do not use marijuana if you have a psychotic disorder. Story 56. Faked a heart attack while I was casually studying in the library with college friends. I was about an hour's drive away, so I booked it to see her. I kept calling to find out which hospital she was in, but she didn't answer, which worried me more. We had only dated for a few months, so I didn't know her family's numbers but kept driving regardless. I made a wild guess and went to the closest hospital to her home. I asked the receptionist if she was there, and she said no. I left and finally got a call from her, saying she was at the hospital I had already been to. Confused, I said that I had asked the receptionist if she was there and was told there was no record. She then said she had just left 5 minutes ago. I became suspicious. Talking with her more, she said she never told me, but she has a weak heart, which surprised me because she jogs. I then asked what her parents were doing to help, and she said not to bring it up to them because it would stress them out. She told me to come over, which I did, and she gave me great sex. I brushed it under the rug after. Maybe a month into dating, I realized one day that we had sex, she jogged, and even played basketball with neighborhood kids all within a few hours. I asked how her heart was, and she kept trying to dodge the subject. I asked again, and she got frustrated, saying she didn't want to feel sad about her weak heart anymore and even tried to give me head within 5 minutes of talking about it. I declined and drove away while she said we were through. Story 57. She was pregnant, clearly not mine. I moved across state lines and raised the boy as my own, only to have her cheat on me. I lost everything I cared about. My family, my home, my job, my band, my car, and my dog. I had to leave it all behind and start over. Story 58. Blue hair. A full head of deep royal blue hair down to her lower back. We have been together 6 years. Blonde now, still attractive. Story 59. Meet me in the middle of the night, drive me to the middle of nowhere to an abandoned church, and follow me into the cellar for intimacy by candlelight. Yes, ma'am, anything for that body. Story 60. Attractive people often have advantages in life. They are frequently given opportunities because of their appearance. It is uncommon to meet an attractive woman who is both humble and down to earth. Story 61. Hot? He was not even hot. But sometimes, out of loneliness and lack of affection, We end up believing many lies. Story 62. Polar opposite political and religious beliefs. It was so bad that I called my brothers on my way to her house to talk me out of it. They tried their best. I did it anyway. She was also a coworker, and that did not end well. But that was not the worst one. A 10 out of 10 woman with a supermodel physique came on to me at a bar one night. I went home with her, and she dumped a large amount of baggage and trauma on me. I should have run away then. I made her my girlfriend instead. About a month in, she told me even more traumatic things that were so bad they made me feel physically sick. She also told me she cheated on her ex because she has a freeze response to unwanted sexual advances due to her trauma and cannot say no in those moments. Basically, she was saying that if anyone tried to have sex with her, she would just let it happen. I stuck around. A few weeks later, she admitted to lying to me about many things, most notably that she had been seeing another man since before we even met. I still did not leave. This continued to escalate for some time, and when I finally walked away, I had significant psychological damage to work through. Story 63. He told me he was considering having a threesome with his father and a girl that wasn't me. Not that I would ever have the desire to fulfill anyone's incestuous fantasies. But damn, he could have at least asked me if I wanted to be the leading lady. The role was proposed to and accepted by another girl, and he was just asking for my advice. What was the final straw to leave? Great question. It was carrying my best friend out of his bedroom, both completely naked, in front of an entire house party. His penis was visibly inside her as they made their way upstairs with absolutely no regard. The entire room stared at me silently, jaws dropped. I couldn't even process what I had just witnessed. I disconnected myself from the bigger picture and simply laughed about it. The entire function stopped and focused on making me face the gravity of what had happened. With a concerningly calm demeanor, I approached her and asked why she had sex with him. Are you ready for the gag? I only had sex with him because I wanted to have sex with you and figured you would join. I had never participated in a threesome with either one of them before. Assuming I would want to join instead of simply communicating your desires and addressing boundaries is crazy. I broke things off with him and never hung out with her again. But flash forward a few years, and she is currently in a public relationship with a different ex-boyfriend. They were both so strikingly beautiful, my natural instinct was to not impose, but an entire room full of strangers insisted I must. Story 64. It was not only because she was attractive. She was much more than that, but red flags were everywhere. I created a post 2 days ago about that. Have a look. Story 65. She was involved in a relationship with her teacher in high school. Before anyone mentions grooming, she understood the situation fully and was in control of the relationship. Story 66. She had sex with a guy literally the day after me. At first, it was casual, and neither of us expected to have feelings. But that's what ended up happening. Although she was still shady, we ended up dating for a bit. I texted her one day asking to hear about her day, and she said she didn't want to talk about it and suggested we should go back to how things were. I wasn't down with it, but it didn't matter because she ghosted me. Story 67. So I met this girl when I was 16. We did some fun things, and eventually, she tried to get more attention. She called me and told me she was pregnant by me. I instantly asked how many lines the test showed, and she answered 2. I replied it should be 1. She then said, "Oh no, it is 1. I responded, "It is actually 2. She said, "I think it is 2. Then I said, "I actually don't know, but I know you are not pregnant." I hung up the phone, and she realized I didn't fall for it. Years later, when I was 23, she contacted me. We had some fun. She told me she was actually married. We kept going for years, but she just wanted the sex, as she was not really getting any with her husband. She married him at 18, and they were just in a friendship marriage. Eventually, after years of cheating with me, I broke it off as I started feeling bad for the guy. 1 year later, she contacted me again. She was divorced because she got caught with another guy. We had some fun a few times, and she disappeared from my life again. 1 year later, she came to me and wanted to just talk. We talked, and she told me she was married to a new man. I asked if she had cheated already. She replied no. The reason I asked was that she wanted a relationship with me while she was still married to the first husband. I declined, and she asked why. I replied, "How can I trust you when you have cheated for years?" She went silent and realized I would never trust her. So she married someone else. After 3 or 4 months, she wanted to have sex again. There it was, she is a serial cheater in marriage. We talked and went for walks just to get to know each other on a more mature level, which she never tried when we were young. She realized I was actually a very nice guy. Then she told me she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She is taking medication now, quit alcohol, and lost excess weight. She wanted to start coming over again, but I told her I did not feel comfortable with it. She then started pressuring me, and I gave in. After 1 month, I felt so bad, and I knew that if she talked to me about it, she would get her way. I blocked her on everything and eventually removed my social media accounts, as I do not wish to use them anymore except Reddit. I have not heard from her again, but I know she is cheating with someone else. This all opened my eyes and showed me that some people cannot be helped. Started around her age of 18, and she is now almost 30. She has a nice personality and is a sweet girl, but a walking red flag when it comes to trust and cheating. I am not perfect and am also at fault, but my argument was always, she is going to cheat anyway, so why not with me since I enjoy the sex? She was a wild sex goddess. Story 68. Oh, where do I begin? He was trying to trap me the week I met him by coming inside me without telling me. I got plan B and started birth control right away. He got mad because his child's mother got a new boyfriend. He was a fan of Andrew Tate. There were many red flags, but he was attractive and very funny. It only took him assaulting me and breaking my car key for me to leave him. I have had a protective order against him since last August. Story 69. She was very attractive and her family had money, but she was still single at 30 and had never been married. Girls that attractive with her background rarely reach 30 without someone trying to commit. While this might not be a concern for every woman, you should definitely ask yourself why she is still available. In this case, it was untreated mental illness. I suffered because I thought I had found a great opportunity, but she was fool's gold. Story 70. Borderline personality disorder, bisexual and open to everything. I couldn't pass it up, but I wouldn't even slow down for a second chance with what I know now. Story 71. I was involved with my roommate the week before she and I became intimate. 2 days after we first got together, she insisted that we be in a relationship. She spoke negatively about him and was generally unpleasant. As I learned more about her, it weighed on my conscience, so I ended things after about a month. Then she tried to return to him. It was a difficult time in my life. Story 72. After we slept together, she said she left something at my house and that I needed to pay her for it. She also said she was polyamorous, then backpedaled. She would pay for her Uber rides to and from my place. She came over almost every night just to have sex. I am pretty sure she had a boyfriend, but she never told me. Story 73. Addiction. I did not realize it at the start, but stayed much longer than I should have because of the physical compatibility. With a lot of hindsight, I realize I should have run screaming when my gut told me to. Story 74. I knew that her mother was mentally unstable and that these traits typically pass down from generation to generation. It showed in some of her anger issues. I had been friends with her for years and had always known this, so I had kept my distance. But she became interested, and the moment I saw her without her shirt, I did not care about anything else. Story 75. She was mean and spoiled. When her dad sent her $5,000 for a 1-week spring break and asked if that was enough for the week, I should have known. But God, it was the best sex I have ever had. Unfortunately, if we were not having sex, we were arguing. Story 76. Did not know what QAnon was, just that it was a podcast he liked. We would talk about political issues like women's health and immigration and agreed on all the points that mattered to me. Built like a Greek marble statue. Story 77. Referred to ex-boyfriends as public enemy number one and outlined ways she would get back at them. So stupid. Story 78. She directly told me she knows how to manipulate me and is really good at it. I stayed for another 3 years. Story 79. Yeah, I am going to hang out with my friend, her boyfriend, and his single friend to relax. I love you. You can trust me. Story 80. His criminal record ended about as well as you would think, but not in the way you think. I lost my faith and I do not want it back. This person really had the audacity to tell me I could not be a good person without God. Like seriously. Story 81. They had way too many best friends of the opposite gender. Normally, I am not the jealous type, but it happened to me twice where I learned that men declare women they desired to date or were rejected by as their best friends, usually because the woman friend-zoned them. In my first relationship, my ex was cheating on me with 2 different women. Both were just friends. In my second relationship, I tried not to carry my mistrust over, and I never really felt threatened by the other women in his life. But he too had many female best friends, all of whom were absolutely beautiful. At times, I felt uncomfortable with how close he was with them. For example, he would always offer to buy them dinner, drop me off first if we were all together, then take her home afterward because she lived the furthest out. One time, we all went away together, us 2 and his 2 best friends, 1 male and 1 female. The next morning, while deciding where to go for breakfast, his female best friend and his other male friend had slept on the pull-out couch in the hotel suite. She was still in her short pajamas, and my ex was wearing pajama pants with no boxers. They began play wrestling, and his private area was pressed against her, which I did not find amusing. We would fight about those things, not because I said anything about it, but because I would shut down and stay silent just watching how he treated his female best friends. Sometimes, he even treated them better than me. Over time, it made me feel really insecure, which led to our breakup. I should have told him how I felt about his female friendships, but I did not want to argue. Now, I do not ignore that red flag. Story 82. Her drug use, including marijuana and alprazolam, and excessive drinking were problematic. She would never admit it, but she had a substance use disorder and did not want to address it. She was an alcoholic. Story 83. Recently, I was the rebound before they got back together after she spent 6 weeks talking about how abusive he was. Story 84. Her ex still tried to call her and win her back. She said I did not have to worry because they were not good for each other despite dating on and off since childhood. She said I was different, and she was in love with me. She was both attractive and exotic, but had significant self-confidence issues. Sure enough, the ex wore her down in the end. The last I heard, they got married. Story 85. She was in an interracial relationship and had to push her date's head down because she was driving past her family. Story 86. When we were in the talking stage, she said she was the best there ever was in bed, was not good at relationships, and according to all her exes, she was crazy. She was 100% correct on all counts. Story 87. Some of my closest friends hinted that they did not like my former partner. My former partner made it clear she did not like my friends. I thought it was just people needing time to warm up to each other. It turns out my former partner was a pathological liar and a generally terrible person. Story 88. She slowly cut me off from all of my female friends because she was jealous, insecure, and manipulative. Story 89. She stabbed me. Granted, we were both under the influence of lysergic acid diethylamide, but she had a bad experience and ended up stabbing me in the side with a pocket knife because she thought I was her ex. After the drugs were out of my system, I remember saying to myself, I should be concerned here, but I was young, insecure, and she was attractive. To no one's surprise, it ended horribly a year later. Story 90. No personality whatsoever. She could not hold a conversation on any topic for longer than a minute, but those legs of hers made my heart race. Story 91. She had 2 children, each from a different former husband, one of whom she was separated from but not yet divorced. I do not think that is unreasonable at 40, but this woman was 25. She was unfaithful to me with multiple men throughout our entire relationship. Story 92. 25 years ago, I knowingly tried to turn a promiscuous woman into a housewife, or at least a committed girlfriend. I thought I could fix her and provide stability. It did not end well. Story 93. The drama. She was always moving from apartment to apartment to apartment. Always having fights with people. Always having massive blowouts with supposedly close friends. There was a nagging voice in the back of my head saying, "It is not normal to have this much drama constantly." But I shoved that voice aside and felt guilty for being judgmental. I am going to lean more into being judgmental from here on out. Story 94. Met this girl. She told me she likes to ghost people. I overlooked that as usual. We had a talking stage for 3 weeks straight, and when I decided to take her on a date, she just disappeared. Till now, I still don't have a clue why she left. Story 95. A Brazilian girl performed oral sex on me because during our conversation I mentioned that Brazilians are majority white. I am not sure if that is accurate, but I used to post frequently on country-related forums. Later, she talked about the slaves or servants they kept when they bought the house. They came with the house and how they treated them well, such as sending their children to grade school. She was very skilled in bed, making love with intense passion. Story 96. Former addict who still spent time with his drug-using friends. When he was at rock bottom, he had an even worse friend group made up of actual addicts. But when he got sober, he returned to friends who were functional users and moved on. He had broad shoulders and played the accordion, so I was basically helpless to resist him. He was the most attractive man I had ever dated, at least in my opinion. Take a guess why I am no longer on speaking terms with him. Story 97. Just recently, I met this guy off Hinge and the red flags were there the first day. But I ignored them and we had a weird, toxic little thing going through text as he lived an hour away. We hooked up the first time, but he kicked me out of the hotel room afterward. Obviously, I should have been done, but he kept pleading for a second chance and then a third. The last time we met up, he smacked me hard across the face during sex, so hard my jaw hurt for a week. When I asked what that was the next morning, because I was drunk but not enough that I couldn't remove myself from the situation, he barely apologized and said we were going rougher next time. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. Story 98. He showed up on our first date looking like he had just crawled out of a ditch. Torn shirt, torn jeans. Story 99. She had a long-term boyfriend who she assured me was terrible to her and that she was going to leave him soon. I was not the only other man she was involved with, but I was convinced I was the one. Well, my feelings convinced me I was the one. This was almost 20 years ago, but honestly, I am glad it did not work out as I had hoped at the time. Story 100. Never let me see his apartment ever. It turned out he was a jealous and obsessive person with a serious untreated mental illness. He was very attractive. My coworker tried to make a move on him during our office party. Story 101. Spent the weekend mostly with friends partying. Communication was minimal over the weekend, but gradually returned to normal by Tuesday. There were many instances of being ignored. Story 102. Dated half of the female population in school. Too hot for me to care. Broke up with him in 2 days though. Story 103. The first time she came over, she went out to her car to get her allergy medication and did a line of cocaine. At that point, I did not even know she used it at all, and when I asked what she had taken, she made me guess. At that time in my life, I was just excited to be in a same-sex relationship. Story 104. Took this girl out to dinner and a movie. I have told this story on other threads, but it is worth sharing again. During the movie and dinner, her phone kept going off. I said she could answer it, no problem. She said, "No, it is okay, it is just my boyfriend." After saying that, she wanted to go back to my place. Story 105. His dry humor was his way of constantly insulting me and then acting like it was a joke. This happened repeatedly, followed by, "This is my personality, you're being sensitive," which got out of hand in the end. I ended up walking away because I was tired of trying to be enough for this man. What was once celebrated about me, he criticized and critiqued all the time. He was so controlling that he would get mad if I put on makeup or made an effort for date night. I was trying to look good for him. Story 106. He had a gold cross around his neck, a big red flag. He turned out to be a difficult person. I trust my instincts now more than ever. Story 107. The crazy hot scale is 1000% a thing, and I feel jealous for the guys who have not experienced it. She literally would do anything in the bedroom, always had a matching set on, and was like a rabbit. But she had severe borderline personality disorder, and I learned a valuable lesson about why they coined the term hot to crazy scale. Story 108. She was mentally unstable and a former methamphetamine addict. 5 years sober, but still unstable. Stunning with an absolutely perfect body, but I endured some difficult experiences to continue the relationship until I finally ended it 10 months later. Story 109. She was polyamorous and already had the love of her life. She spoke negatively about other current partners. What could possibly go wrong? Story 110. He forced himself on my friend but was the most sought-after guy in school. Very good-looking and tall, with semi-genius intelligence, track star, and Student Government Association president, who gave a once awkward, bullied girl like me attention after a 10th grade secondary school glow-up. He talked about her like trash when she revealed that he assaulted her through Twitter. He was also an elitist and had some racially problematic anti-black biases. But I was in love. He was cheating on me the entire time and chose the other partner after being unable to decide. Another one of my girlfriends knew this and said nothing. Story 111. After 3 months of intense intimacy, I discovered he stopped going to his house and was staying in my house 24/7, eating my groceries. He was extremely charming and brought home just enough groceries to avoid raising my anxiety. Then I found out he had just gotten out of rehabilitation. His house was actually his mother's house, and the beautiful shiny BMW with the custom rims belonged to his sister, who started college out of state and couldn't have a car during her freshman year. On the same day, he admitted that the great job he claimed to have at the hospital laboratory, he had been fired the month before for drug use. I had made his lunch and ironed his lab coat every morning. His going to work was actually him and his band sitting around doing drugs at the bass guitar player's house. Like most addicts, he was able to convince me of the dream, that I would fix the injured lion, pull the thorn from his paw, and help him redeem himself. When I tried to kick him out, he had a key to my house and was receiving mail at my address. Even though he was stealing from me, the authorities wouldn't remove him and told me I had to go through a legal eviction process. Never again. Story 112. What? Separated for a couple of years? There is no way this is a sign of commitment issues. She ended up going back to him while we were still together. What the heck? Story 113. My best friend said, "She has intense eyes, but if you want to impress the attractive bartender, you deserve it." I did indeed, and the intensity went well beyond the eyes. Story 114. To all the men out there, if she cannot take no for an answer, leave. It may seem cute at first, but when you come back to your dorm after a 13-hour school day and she wants intimacy but you are too tired and she cannot accept no, leave. If she becomes upset, irritable, or will not stop begging, leave. If she threatens suicide or self-harm when you say no, leave. Even if she says she loves you and cares about you, leave. If you are in this situation, do not give in. Stay strong, guys. Know your worth. Story 115. She had many ex-boyfriends and at least 2 ex-husbands, but they were all narcissists. She was physically aggressive, and I was physically inexperienced. Story 116. Not a big red flag, but on our first date, I took her to lunch and saw her sipping from my soda. She wiped the top of the bottle and tried to hide it. No big deal at the time. I thought it was cute. 6 months later, I am kicking myself because that was a small sign showing me she liked to do things behind her partner's back and hide it. I won't go into details. It is funny how the smallest signs can give you clues to deeper behaviors. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.